Time now for another vlog over here on my vlogs channel. In case you're wondering, yes, I do have a vlogs channel. It is always linked below in the description section of all my videos, and it's over in the featured channel section of the main channel. And if you have a vlog suggestion for a future episode, by the way, check the vlogs list, the playlist itself, to make sure that I've yet to vlog about the subject matter, the topic that you would want me to vlog about. But if I've yet to do so, you're more than encouraged to send me your vlog suggestions via all the social media below in the comments section, Twitter, Facebook, as well as Discord. All of the social media to the Go Birds Nation linked below in the description section. And if you happen to have like a vlog suggestion that you feel very uncomfortable with, you know, people knowing it was you that suggested it, you want to be anonymous, that's perfectly fine too. Just DM me on Twitter, private message me on Facebook or Discord. Just let me know about what your vlog suggestion is, and just let me know you want me to keep it anonymous, and I would be more than happy to do that as well. Okay, so today's subject is violence. And humanity, unfortunately, has a long, sad history of violence. I mean, we're very well acquainted with violence. Go all the way back in time to ancient, wars and civilizations, and you hear about the brutality that was carried out by the empires of old, like the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, the Babylonians, Sumerians. The list goes on and on. I mean, we don't need to have a history lesson here about how violent humanity has been since the beginning. Whatever you happen to believe, whether you believe in something religious or scientific regarding our origins, the obvious fact is we are a violent species. But, I mean, a lot of predator species are. I mean, you look at lions, they're violent. You look at wolves, they're violent. And unfortunately, that's part of our nature. I mean, we have good qualities too, we're intelligent. Well, some of us are intelligent. We can be compassionate. We can be loving. We can find inspiration. We can create beautiful things like art and literature, and do awesome stuff. Helping each other out. Random acts of kindness and compassion. Especially when it comes to those in need. So humanity definitely has a good side, and we're very complex. We're not all bad, but we're not all good either. So that's one thing that I just wanted to point out before we get started with this particular topic when it comes to violence. Now, every day it seems like something awful or tragic has transpired throughout the world, whether it's the various wars going on, acts of terrorism, oppression in various countries, the horrible, inhumane things that have been done to people in third world countries throughout Africa, as well as in the Middle East, in like North Korea, for example. List goes on and on. But at the same time, there's acts of violence happening in first world countries as well. Every country across the globe has some pretty bad stuff happening to various degrees. Now, some countries a little bit better than others, and you look at like reports of like homicides or assaults on each other. Some of the more nastier acts of human nature, and in some countries, yeah, it's a lot lower. In other countries, it's much higher. And this past week in the United States on Valentine's, there was a brutal school shooting in Florida that unfortunately left 17 people dead, and of course the lives of their families and friends left in an utter state of tragedy that that they're going to have to deal with and cope with for a very long time, even after they say their goodbyes, and they've already had some funerals, and some of them already been laid to rest. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be something that's going to be with a lot of the friends and a lot of the family and the loved ones of those 17 victims that were lost on Valentine's Day for many years to come. And those scars will never go away because, like physical scars, physical scars can remain. But at the same time, you don't really think as much about the physical scars. It's the mental, it's the emotional scars, it's that trauma that really will stay with you much longer than any sort of like physical damage. Even though I'm not trying to downplay any physical harm that's come to you or me or anything like that. What I'm saying is that the families and friends and loved ones that have been tragically affected by those losses, by those deaths, there's no way to make that right. There's no way to fill that void that's now in their lives. And as you get older, we all have to deal with the tragedy of losing people. Some through natural causes or time, and others through violence. The worst kind. Human on human violence. And it's sad that we live in a world where we actually have monsters that walk amongst us. And not everybody is born as a monster or a demon. In time, certain events transpire that may mold somebody into a creature like that. But at the same time, I think that we all have a good side and we all have a dark side to us. And with this kid, it was no exception. And I don't like the fact that the news media continues to, talk about this person or any of these shooters or any of these, mass murderers, because they become infamous. They become known. People like, oh, so-and-so. Oh, so-and-so. He did this. She did that. And in a weird, twisted way, we live in a society now that thrives off of recognition of becoming somebody, of being, in the newspaper or on TV, or have something go viral. And they're like, oh yeah, people knew about me. I was that person that did this and that. Like, everybody wants their 15 minutes. And sadly, there's some people out there that are going a very dangerous route in order to get that 15 minutes. Now, this kid is going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And I hope he rots. I hope he stays there for the rest of his life. I don't want him to get the death penalty. I mean, I know he's plea bargaining. He says he's going to plead guilty if he, doesn't get the death penalty. I feel like the death penalty is too, quote unquote, merciful. I think that he should have to live behind bars for the rest of his life. I think that for his crime, he should have to endure decades of living. He should live to be an old man, sitting behind bars, every day thinking about those 17 lives he took, and realizing that he did a very horrible thing, as well as the lives of the families and friends and loved ones that were affected by what he did. So I entirely blame that young man for what he did. And, there are people out there that want to blame other things, that want to blame law enforcement agencies. They want to blame video games. They want to blame guns. But at the same time, at the end of the day, you have to lay the blame on the individuals responsible for these heinous acts. That's where the blame completely lies. And I think the kid had serious issues from what I read about him. And, I know some people want to blame the adopted parents, but from what I read, from what I gathered, it seemed like they took this kid in. I think his mom died, and he was going to get like $800,000 in inheritance. So in a couple years from now, he was going to be set, He was going to be okay, financially, as long as he was smart and didn't, blow that money. Financially, he was going to be okay for the rest of his days. Instead, he's going to sit behind bars and rot. So hopefully, at the very least, the families will be able to get that financial compensation of his quote-unquote inheritance. And I realize that money doesn't bring back those kids. It doesn't make things any better for the families that are going through such a terrible loss right now. But at the same time, like I said, death is too good of a punishment, too easy for this kid or anyone. I mean, I used to believe in the death penalty. I mean, I used to be like, I guess you could say more quote unquote conservative. I'm more in the middle now. I mean, I still do have libertarian leanings. I still believe in the right to self-defense. I am a gun owner, but I'm a very responsible gun owner. And like the majority of gun owners in the United States, I hope to never have to use a firearm on another human being. And that's the way the majority of people that own firearms are. They're not looking forward to ever, having to get into a shootout with somebody or do, that atrocious, horrible thing that that kid did. And to be honest, I don't think he should have had guns to begin with. I think that it's obvious that he had serious problems, serious issues. And somebody like that does not need to have guns. But unfortunately, guns are not the only means to carry out, inflict harm, as most of you know. You could kill somebody with a knife. You could kill somebody with a baseball bat. You could kill somebody by making a pipe bomb or some other type of explosive. And, there's plenty of stories out there every day of somebody killing somebody with a weapon other than a firearm. And I don't live in this fantasy where if you make guns illegal, if you take guns away from everybody, then, there'll be no such thing as violence anymore, and everyone will hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and no one else will ever, kill another person. I don't believe that. I believe that even if we never had guns, you would still have wars. You'd still have humans fighting and killing each other, justified or unjustified. All you have to do is look at history before the advent of guns, and you look how horrible some of the wars were in the past. They fought with swords and shields and spears and axes and bows and arrows and catapults and other weapons as well. And they were able to carry out mass murder. They slaughtered towns and cities that they conquered, not with guns, but at the tip of a blade, And so that just shows you that no matter what the weapon is, we as humans are fully capable of carrying out, mass slaughter of each other. And, the worst weapon ever, sits in stockpile in several countries right now, the United States being one of them, and some of the other superpowers, nuclear bombs. That device, in a matter of seconds, killed hundreds of thousands of Japanese citizens. And, honestly, if there's something that should be illegal, it should be nuclear bombs that should be illegal. Because those things, if those birds ever start flying, especially in the tense world we live in right now, with, North Korea saber-rattling, the American president saber-rattling. Yes, I know I'm an American, but the point is, I fear that eventually something like that could transpire. We could end up having some sort of incident sooner or later down the road, and potentially leading towards war. And there's always that fear when you have a war breakout that one side or both sides will eventually decide to use nukes. And you do that, then you go from, an incident that transpired in Florida where 17 people were murdered to that number escalating beyond 17. I mean, that number can go to, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, obliterated in a matter of seconds. Perhaps even billions, perhaps the entire planet. This is, unfortunately, our nature as a species, and it's definitely an ugly aspect of humanity. And look, if push comes to shove, I'm willing to defend myself against somebody. If somebody tried to break in my house and somebody tried to cause harm to me or somebody I cared about, yeah, I would have no choice but to shoot them. I don't want to, but as a gun owner, as someone that does believe in citizens' rights to defend themselves, yeah. Because, the police, most of the time, they're there after the fact, after a crime has been committed. They're not there to prevent crime. They're there to, bring justice to the criminal that carried out the act of crime. And the way I've always seen it is it's up to the citizen to be able and willing to defend themselves. And like I said, I don't think that everybody should own a firearm. I think that there should be background checks, and there are background checks for the guns I owned. I had to go through a background check for all of them. And I think that anyone that has serious mental issues definitely should not be allowed to own a firearm, because a lot of these shooters, like the one in Vegas, the one here in Florida, all the other ones that I believe we should not even mention their name. We should not even acknowledge their name. We do have to report it in the news. You do have to see it, unfortunately, these horrible deeds and acts have been carried out. But do we necessarily have to, continue putting their name in the newspaper? Do we have to make them famous? I don't think so. I think the focus should be on the victims that were lost. We should know that the names of the victims, the 17 souls that were taken. Those names should be what's ingrained in our minds when it comes to how the news reports it. But most of the time, unless you actually knew one of the 17 that were killed in Florida, or one of the others that were murdered in Vegas, or any other one of these mass shooting events, I mean, most of us, admittedly, sadly, couldn't name one person that was killed in Florida or Vegas or somewhere else entirely. But a lot of people can tell you, oh, I know who the killer was for that one. It was that killer. Oh, it was this killer. And I think that's part of the problem that the news media has, is maybe instead of focusing so much on the identity of the killer, we get the basics out there. You mention it at first, but then all you do is you say the shooter. The Florida Valentine's mass shooter, or whatever you want to call him. Just don't call him by his name. Don't give him that kind of publicity, because he doesn't deserve it. None of them do for what they've done. But those that do deserve the publicity are those that were lost, that were the victims of these atrocious acts of violence. Those are the ones we should know about. Those are the ones that we should remember. The 17 that died in Florida. That's what the story should be about. Their lives. The students that were killed, the adults that were killed too. Like, who were they? What were they like? I would like to know about them. And I know that you can find out about them. I realize that. But my point is, it seems like the news media always seems more focused on the one aspect as opposed to the other aspect. And I think that sends the wrong message to society. We should always focus on those that were on the receiving end of these horrible acts of violence. And like when it comes to video games, so I read a Salon article, once again, demonizing violent video games. And I'll say that there might be a small percentage of those that play violent video games that ultimately carry out acts of violence. I don't think it's because of the video games, because the majority of gamers that play video games that are violent, like myself included, like Grand Theft Auto, I know it doesn't seem like a violent game right now by just driving it around in a truck, but this is an extremely violent game. And the series has been violent since the beginning, back in the 90s. And I've been playing these games since I was a teen. Violent video games. I've been playing video games longer than my teens, but violent video games per se, like Grand Theft Auto and a list of other violent games out there, I've been playing them since I was a kid. Younger than this kid was. And I didn't go out on any mass shootings. I've never shot anybody or harmed anybody in real life. I understand the difference between fantasy in a video game and reality. And if we're going to go after violent video games, why stop at violent video games? We need to go after violent TV shows, like The Walking Dead, for example, and several others out there, and violent movies, and violent novels, and violent theaters, violent plays. Like Shakespeare wrote several violent plays that, he's well known for, like Macbeth and Hamlet, for example, Romeo and Juliet, just to name a few. A lot of them are potentially violent. Yet, there's no call for any of that to be banned. The point is, violence is unfortunately part of our history, historically, and even from an entertainment aspect. But at the same time, I've always seen video games like Grand Theft Auto as kind of like a mental punching bag. And there have been numerous times, going through my late teens and my 20s and even into my 30s, where I had a really bad day, and I was just mad at the world for whatever rhyme or reason. And I took my anger out in a video game. And you know what? After I was done, I felt a lot better. Just like putting on a pair of boxing gloves and going up against a punching bag and just beating the crap out of a punching bag. Nobody else was harmed in the process, and you got it out of your system. And that's how I've always felt about violent video games. So I don't feel like violent video games or violent TV shows or movies or books or plays are to blame. I feel like we need to focus on the individuals. And, if there is a problem, if, you notice telltale warning signs about somebody, like I think that, he or she, wants to kill a whole bunch of people. They're posting stuff on social media. They're acting cruel towards animals. They're doing this and that. And there was a lot of telltale warning signs about this kid, for example. There were, from everything I read. And I think the FBI and local law enforcement even knew about some of this stuff. They were there. The warning signs were there. But nobody acted. Nobody did something. And I'm not entirely blaming the FBI or law enforcement for that. I'm just saying that in the end, it is this one individual's fault. He's the one who did this horrible thing. But at the same time, if all the warning signs are there, if everything is all the boxes are being ticked, like obviously he has firearms, he's acting this way, he's talking about this on social media, he's what I'm saying. Most of you probably have looked into this as well. If everything is, if all the flags are waving that this is a potentially dangerous kid, then yeah, I think something should have been done preemptively. At the very least, his firearms should have been seized. Because I don't know. The truth is we never really know about somebody 100% anyways. I don't know about any of you 100%, even those of you I play with on a regular basis. I don't know about even friends or family in my life 100%. And they don't know about me 100%. But, this kid was not one of these types like, oh, he was such a nice kid. He was always friendly. We never thought that he would be capable of this. His foster parents, which only took him in, I think, a few months ago, after his mom died or his adopted mom or something, they didn't know. They had no real idea. They were both working. They both felt sorry for this kid. He was going through a state of depression. I've been there myself plenty of times. And I, in a way, I kind of sympathize because, I lost my mom when I was a baby. But at the same time, that's still no justification for what this monster did. Especially the fact that, in a few years from now, financially, he was going to be pretty stable because he was, set to inherit some money. So, and, also complaining about girl problems, okay? Who hasn't had relationship problems? Who hasn't, felt lonely? And I've vlogged about some of this before, like, oh, I wish I had a girlfriend, or I wish I had a boyfriend, People always have that issue because we have this drive to where we want somebody, where we want to have somebody special in our lives, to love and be loved by. But at the same time, the way you act, will either attract or else it'll repel people. And the way he had been acting from what I read about him, and unfortunately I feel like I put too much time and effort into learning anything about this creature. And that's part of the problem. I just can't imagine why anyone would be even remotely interested in him. Why would any girl around his age want to date that guy? If I was a teenage girl around his age, I'd want nothing to do with him. So, there you go. That's just the entire point. We are all responsible for ourselves. Yeah, when you're being raised by your parents and you're young, a lot of the responsibilities on them. And as a parent, yeah, you have to take responsibility for your kids. You have to teach your kid right from wrong. Just like my grandfather, my grandfather's the one who, taught me about, firearm safety. He went through great lengths explaining to me, how you must treat every gun as if it's loaded. Even if you've checked it and double and triple checked it and it's empty, you treat it like it's loaded. You never point a gun at somebody unless you have no choice but to in self-defense. So yes, you have to teach responsibility to your kids, not just when it comes to firearm safety, but also to like responsibility to how you treat others in the world around you. And if you have a problem with somebody, if you're having issues, then yeah, you need to go to your parents and talk to them, or you need to go to your legal guardians, or you need to go to a friend or a family member or somebody you can confide in, or go to a therapist. Because harming somebody else that did absolutely nothing to you is not the answer. I mean, they're just living their lives just like we all are. Trying to make it in this world, trying to graduate from high school, trying to, get ready to go off to college or trade school or do whatever they plan on doing with their lives, or, they're just, investing several years of their life into this particular career as a teacher or whatnot. And, they're just going about their lives too every day, just like everyone else is. And yeah, we all have problems and we all can get depressed and we all have these thoughts that go through our heads sometimes. We all have these demons we have to deal with, but at the same time, the actions carried out by individuals like this in no way justifies anything at all. They are responsible for the choices they make. And if anyone out there has issues, has problems, feels like they have these demons going on in their head, my suggestion is seek help. Seek help. And if you feel like you're in a situation similar, and hopefully most of you are not, but there's always one person out there or two people or something like that, because you aren't just born a monster overnight. A series of unfortunate events transform you into one. But at the end of the day, we still have control over the kind of person we want to be. We have that control still. Even in my teens, because I grew up during the Columbine massacre. And at the time, I was kind of an outsider in my teens. We wore trench coats because it was cool, because, The Crow, the movie, that came out in the 90s that we were all fans of. We're all into the freak scene or goth scene, and, you do look down on your classmates when you're an outsider. You're like, screw them. I want nothing to do with them. But at the same time, that incident, really did open my eyes up to what some people were capable of. Like, despite what I was going through in high school, I never would imagine that I would ever do something as horrific as that to my classmates. Even classmates I despised and hated. Justified or unjustified, I didn't have the right to harm them. To do something like what those kids did back in the 90s. So yeah, I made a personal choice in the 90s as a teenager not to be like that. I saw what they did. I'm like, that's not the kind of person I want to be. I don't want to be remembered for that. And that's another thing that you have to go through your head. How do you want to be remembered? And I think most people don't want to be remembered that way. They want to be remembered fondly. If I was to die tomorrow, or if you were to die tomorrow, how would you want your friends and family to remember you? And I think most of you would feel like I feel right now. You would feel like, you know what, I kind of want them to remember me fondly. I wouldn't want them, cursing my name or wanting to, take a piss at my grave for the horrible shit I did. And that's the way I look at it. I want people, when my time comes, whether, like I said, it is tomorrow or next week or next year or a decade or several decades from now and I'm an old man, when my time finally comes, and for those that are still around that loved me and remembered me, I want them to remember me in a very fondly way. I don't want to ever be, remembered as, oh my God, I can't believe he did this. I can't believe he did that. Because we've all made mistakes. We've all done some bad things in our lives, but nothing compared to what that kid in Florida did over Valentine's. So you always have to be mindful of your actions and take responsibility for yourselves. And that's what it comes down to. He should take responsibility for what he did. And I guess he is, because he's, confessed to what he did. And, he's going to have to sit behind bars for the rest of his life. He'll never have a girlfriend. He'll never have a career. He'll never get to experience, the joys that most people will be able to. The triumphs and tragedies we all go to who aren't behind bars. And who knows what horrors are going to await him in prison. Who knows what's going to happen to him in prison. I don't know what's going to transpire, but I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of fellow inmates that aren't going to take too kindly to what he did. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's bad people in prison, guilty of all sorts of crimes, but at the same time, you know, the guy's life is ruined one way or the other. I mean, either way, his life is ruined, but he's also ruined a lot of other people's lives through his evil actions. The 17's lives lost, along with the friends, family, and loved ones of those that, their lives will never be the same.